Hello, welcome to another episode of the Horror Vision Horror Podcast. I'm Shawn, and I'm doing a little something different today. So, last night, Ray and I watched the new movie The Cellar that just hit Shudder this week, and today is something called Easter. I was unaware of this holiday. Ray apparently had Easter commitments, something about digging up bodies. Sounded kind of weird, but so he's off doing that. And pretty much everybody from the Horror Vision is off doing Easter festivities, and I am not. So I'm much more interested in talking about The Cellar with you. So this movie is by Brendan Muldowney. Muldowney. It's an Irish movie. He's an Irish writer-director, and it stars Alicia Cuthbert, Owen Mackin, Abby Fitz, and Dylan Fitzmaurice Brady. Really cool movie. This is definitely a flick where I was a little hesitant going in. Trailer looked great. Shudder usually delivers. I don't really know where my hesitancy came from. I think because it was named The Cellar, and obviously there's a lot of movies that follow this titular format where it's the something. It's a little tiresome. However, there's been a lot of really great ones in recent memory, so I kind of always just put that off to the side, the prejudice off to the side. The Shed was one from a couple years ago. I remember thinking, like, what a boring ass title. How, like, really, The Shed? And I really liked it. It was really good. So, I mean, I always try and keep my prejudices with this stuff on the back burner because, even I have a short story I ended up naming The Apartment, and at first I really hated naming it that, and then I realized it was actually the best possible name, so guilty as charged. So I understand. So anyway, so I went to this movie a little hesitant, but really kind of great trailer. So what did I think? I think I liked it quite a bit. It's definitely one where I like the mechanics and the subject matter more than the actual execution. There were a few things I feel like I would have liked to see done differently, just with the kind of familial aspects. It follows a wife and husband and their teenage and preteen, like 10-year-old son, as they move into this house they bought at auction for next to nothing in the Irish countryside. They move in, and it's a little weird that, like, it happens really quickly where they move in. It's an old house. There's obviously history. There's a lot of unknowns. It's got a dank, spooky looking cellar. And it's like the first night the parents have to go at night. They work somehow with influencers, which usually when I hear that word is another like immediate red flag, unless they're gonna like kill all of them. And they have to rush off for a meeting kind of in the middle of the night or in the evening, I guess. So that seemed a little bit weird. Like the setup really is like kind of sprints toward the inciting incident. I didn't feel like I knew them very well at that point, so there could have been maybe a little bit more that set that up. And they're kind of like I was curious, like, okay, the kids have accents, the husband has an accent, she doesn't. Give me a little something so I know what I'm doing. Whatever, it's fine. So they're at a meeting. The daughter is watching the 10-year-old, and the lights go out, and she calls the parents, and Alicia Cuthbert, she's like, oh, you're gonna have to go down into the cellar and go to the fuse box. And it just seemed really weird. It just went like, and she's like, oh, you can do this, baby. And the daughter is on the phone, and she goes down the steps, and she's like, okay, there's 10 steps, so just count with me. 1, 2, and I was kind of like, would this really be happening? I mean, I guess if they're really kind of shitty parents, and we kept joking that the movie should have been called Mother of the Year. But anyway, but this leads into the first thing where I was like, okay, that's cool, I'm in. And there's supposed to be 10 steps, and so the daughter's counting along with the mother on the phone, and when she gets to the 10th step, the mother's like, okay, so now you're on the basement, so and then the daughter's like 11, 12, and her voice kind of goes like it's spacey or hypnotic, and she just keeps counting. And it's really well done. It's really eerie. I'd never seen anything like that done before, and it immediately like made up for all of any perceived shortcomings, whether they're actually there or not, that I had prior to that. So I was like, okay. and then she's missing. So they rush home from their meeting, their marketing meeting for Instagram or whatever. And I mean, already you can see, like, I don't like these people very much. They work in marketing on social media. They kind of just move their kids in the middle of nowhere for no reason. And I mean, it's just, the whole thing was a little weird. So that creates a little bit of a dissonance with the characters and the movie. But so daughter disappears. They call in the cops. Everybody's looking around, can't find her. Blah blah blah. And then what you end up. I'm not going to go full spoiler, but the house, its previous owner was into magic. The name of the manor is actually like Latin for chaos, and it's so obviously Latin for chaos because it's like Xaos, which I forget how they said you pronounce it, but it's obviously chaos. And so then there's this whole thing. The guy was into this, like, manipulating dimensional space, which is, I'm like, oh, I'm so into this. And mathematics is a way that they can access other dimensions. Really reminded me of Archive 81. Rest in peace, Archive 81, that Netflix show. There's a podcast, I haven't listened to that yet, but I will be finding that. Anyway, I digress. And it goes from there, and it ended up being really fascinating. They bring in Leviathan, and they bring in Baphomet, and they do some interesting things with Baphomet. I think Baphomet kind of gets a bad rap because it's perceived as this, like, demonic entity, and that's not really what it was. But they do a really good job visually with it, so I was fine with it. And in the end, I really, really liked the movie. So we finished the movie, and I was like, oh, wow. And then immediately, when I looked it up, I realized the director had done a short in 2004 called The 10 Steps. And I knew right away, I'm like, this has to be what this movie's based on. So we looked it up, and it's on YouTube. It's called The 10 Steps. Brendan Muldowney. And it's clear as day. It is a small, like a 10-minute microverse that this obviously informed this entire movie, and it's really cool. So I suggest, if you watch The Cellar on Shudder, right after that, go watch The 10 Steps on YouTube. And yeah, it was really cool. But there's some scenes are like exact. The counting on the phone. There's different circumstances that the parents are involved in when it's happening. It's not a marketing meeting. That was obviously made to kind of bring the characters up to the modern day. It always blows me away. I'm looking at a movie that's 2004, right? So that's 18 years ago. And I mean, it looks like it's, at first, I'm like, when is this from? Like 1990? Like, it looks, there's such a gulf of difference in all of the social aesthetic and clothes, just so many things between now and then that you don't realize, or I guess myself being in you know, a 46-year-old man, I guess I don't realize that there is that big of a difference, but there is a huge difference. So it looks really dated, but it still worked, and it was really cool. It had I like the way it ended, and it obviously, like, begged to be continued, and so eventually, luckily, he got the chance to, and I'm glad he did. I can't wait to see what else he does next. So that's The Cellar. That's on Shudder. Another thing I briefly wanted to talk about is the most recent Reckless book just came out. So this is Ed Brubaker, Shawn Phillips, Jacob Phillips. This one's the fourth Reckless book. This is The Ghost in You. Really, really cool. Every time we get a Reckless book, I always say to Kirsten, I read it first, I'm like, I don't want to say it's the best one yet, but it might be the best one yet. I felt the same way about this. It's because every one of them is fantastic. There's such growth with these characters. And this one really focuses, like, Reckless is actually not in the book. He is in San Francisco doing another job, which I guess is then going to be that'll be the fifth book, Brubaker has said. But so it focuses on his assistant, Anna, and it takes place in 1989, and it involves a kind of Elvira personality, hiring her to, like, look into this Hollywood Hills mansion she inherited. And it was really cool. There's some super spooky stuff. It kind of dances on a supernatural line a little bit. Yeah, loved it. So this, I mean, I can't recommend these enough. And, you know, this is going to be either movies or a show at some point fairly soon. They've kind of teased pictures of Sebastian Stan reading them. So I don't know if that's going to actually happen. None of this is breaking news. If you don't get Brubaker's newsletter in your email, I suggest you find it and sign up for it. It's maybe twice a month, maybe, and it's always packed with, like, news on his upcoming stuff, news on the Phillips family's upcoming stuff, and then like cool, like what he's reading, what he's watching, recommendations, and always weird crime articles he links to. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, so this is great, as all of them are. And then last thing, we had planned to do an episode on the new movie You Won't Be Alone, by Goran Stolevski. Probably saying that wrong. And it didn't end up happening. We saw it in the theater last week. A group of us went. It's already out of the theater. I actually wanted to go back for a second viewing the following week, and it was gone after Monday. So it was literally in the theater. I don't think it was a full 7 days. It's a shame. It is not going to be for your regular horror fan. I don't mean that to sound condescending. It's not really a horror movie. Definite horror elements for sure. It follows a young girl who is marked by a witch as an infant and then claimed at age 16, and the witch takes her into the wilds of Macedonia. I think it's like late 1800s. And I guess is looking, I don't know if it's supposed to be like an heir situation or she's passing on the witch tradition, but the track they took with witches in this was fascinating. It was total body horror, and they could shapeshift. There was some really gross stuff with that, but it was all really well done, really cool. But the thing with the movie, why I say it's not necessarily a horror movie, and a lot of horror fans, I feel like, I don't want to say, like, you should definitely try and watch it. I think it was great. I think people will like it. But if you're looking for like a horror movie, it's not going to be for that time and place. So just keep that in mind. It breathes. There's not really a plot. There's that setup with the witch and the girl. And then it really just follows this girl in her life as she tries to find out who she is, and what she wants to be, and just to make a life, because she hasn't really had one. In order to try and hide her from the witch, her mother raised her in like a cave for 16 years, which is the whole first 20 minutes I had a little bit of problem with, because I was like, are we supposed to think that she hasn't left this fucking cave since she was an infant? And that was a setup. It seemed a little bit weird. Didn't work at first. But really, the longer the movie went on, I really was pulled into this character's struggle, and it's one of those, it's really just about life, and so she assumes different people's visages and then tries to live their life and tries to find something that gives hers meaning. And it was very good. It was the kind of movie where, like, I struggled with it at first. By the end, I really liked it. And then, like, 3 days later, I was like, God damn, I'd like to see that again. It felt like there was a hidden epiphany in it. So, very good movie. Already out of the theaters. It will probably be on Prime as a, VOD. Maybe now. If not now, soon. So, that's it. So, okay, I just want to run over a couple things, and then we'll be back with an episode very soon with Professor John Trafton again for Robert Eggers' The Northman, which we are seeing next week, and I'm super excited for. So, till then, I'm Shawn, and this is the Horror Vision.
A pandemic of violence floods the streets of major cities as cases of the media-dubbed murder virus MV20 soar, causing those infected to go on killing sprees. Caught in the middle, police detective Angela Miller finds her only trustworthy ally in the self-proclaimed psychic PI Gerald Henry. As the two try to navigate the violence, they are drawn into New Age guru Abramelin Harvest's plot to heal the planet. Harvest's missive:
the world is sick, and humanity is the infection.
The cure: murder. From the twisted mind of Shawn C. Baker, author of A Collection of Desires and Shadowplay Book 1, Kim and Jesse, comes his most vicious novel yet, Murder Virus.